Tashdile everyone, I'm Sakina Butt and welcome to Tibet This Week, a weekly feature in English that tells you about this week's news on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration. Let's look at the headlines first. His Holiness the Dalai Lama meets former US President Barack Obama and call for action for world peace. Tibetan Muslims have equal responsibility towards Tibetan freedom struggle, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. His Holiness the Dalai Lama says Tibet not seeking independence, urges China to respect Tibetan cultural heritage. His Holiness is very healthy, is the best spokesperson, the best face for Tibetan cause, CTA President to BBC World. Free trade with China should not be free pass on human rights, CTA President to CBC News. Taiwan Parliament passes bill to dissolve Mongolia-Tibet Affairs Commission. Canadian senators launch inquiry into state of political prisoners in Tibet. We are here to add our voice to the International Tibetan Movement, Australian parliamentary delegation. His Holiness the Dalai Lama today met with the former US President Barack Obama at ITC Moria Hotel in New Delhi. The meeting, which is sixth in series, is taking place in India for the first time. The meeting of the former Nobel laureates lasted for 45 minutes and dwelt on various topics pertaining to promoting peace in today's world torn by strife and violence. Both laureates spoke about promoting compassion and altruism and the kind of future they envision for the world. His Holiness also expressed that there have been a couple of meetings of the Nobel Peace Laureates, but there were of very less action and more of words on paper.
I mentioned to him, now time come, we need promotion of sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings.
His Holiness expressed that laureates should meet to effect changes for the immediate future. His Holiness also said that since he is based in India, he is committed to reviving the ancient Indian thoughts to promote peace and compassion. Referring to Obama, His Holiness said, "You are not only a former US President, but you are a former Nobel laureate. You are young and you can do a lot. We should fulfill our aspiration for world peace. Maybe my generation will not see the results, but your generation will definitely see the results." While serving as the US President, Obama had previously described His Holiness as a good friend and also repeatedly emphasized his support for middle way policy of the Central Tibetan Administration during his series of meetings with the Tibetan spiritual leader. Obama arrived last night in India from China. In Beijing, he met with Chinese President Xi Jinping this Wednesday. During his 8-year presidency, Obama has hosted His Holiness 4 times in the White House, in 2010, 2011, 2014 and 2016. Their first meeting was in September 2005 when Obama was a senator and as a member of the Senate for Foreign Relations Committee. On Thursday last week, His Holiness the Dalai Lama greeted members of the Tibetan Muslim community in Kolkata. In his address, His Holiness lauded their efforts in keeping the Tibetan language alive in their community and encouraged the youngsters to keep alive the Tibetan culture and identity. On Thursday last week, at a session hosted by the Indian Chamber of Commerce in Kolkata, His Holiness the Dalai Lama said that Tibet wants to stay with China and seek development, but China must respect Tibet's culture and heritage. Speaking at an interactive session, His Holiness said, "We are not seeking independence. We want to stay with China. We want more development." The Nobel-winning Tibetan leader stressed that China too must respect Tibetan's culture and heritage. On Friday last week, His Holiness the Dalai Lama returned to Dharamsala from his week-long visit to Delhi, Bhubaneswar and Kolkata. On Thursday last week, the president of the Central Tibetan Administration, Dr. Lobsang appeared on the Impact program of the BBC World with host Yelda Hakim.
Dr. Lobsang Sangay joins me.
The interview streamed live touched on various topics concerning His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Tibet and the Tibetan freedom struggle. Speaking on the diminishing attitudes globally towards the Tibetan cause due to China's economic rise and power on the international stage, President Dr. Sangay spoke about Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for the new era and said that this basically meant no liberal democracy and no freedom, but rather a one-party rule.
The Dalai Lama, we're hearing reports, is saying that he probably won't travel as much or will probably not travel at all abroad. So much of the hope of the campaigning the cause is now on you.
Now that's a big shoes to fill, and His Holiness Dalai Lama recently told a group of youth who had come from all over that I will be traveling more on his behalf, but I will do so. But His Holiness is very healthy. He will be traveling to various countries around the world. Now he's the best spokesperson and the best face for the Tibetan cause. So I won't be able to fill in his shoes, but he's definitely sharing or giving me more responsibilities, and I will do the best I can.
Lobsang, thank you so much for joining us here.
In his interview with CBC News Network during his Ottawa visit, President Dr. Sangay called on the Canadian government and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to support the middle way approach and to uphold the Canadian values and principles when dealing with China.
You're an advocate of the middle way approach. Can you explain that?
Middle way is middle of separation from China and repression of the Tibetan people. So what we say is, if the Chinese government stops repression of the Tibetan people, then we will not seek separation from China or independence from China. So we will be content with genuine autonomy as per Chinese laws and within China. So this is a win-win proposition. Based on middle way approach, we want to have dialogue between the envoys of the Dalai Lama and the representative of the Chinese government to resolve the issue of Tibet as soon as possible. But at the same time, we must have 50 years plan, that is to preserve our identity. US government supports one China policy and also support middle way approach for the Tibetan people. So when President Obama met with His Holiness Dalai Lama in 2014 and 16, both times White House has stated that they applaud and support the middle way approach. And I hope Canada is next to America, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau could come out with the same approach and say, yes, we support and accept one China policy, but we also support and applaud middle way approach as envisioned by His Holiness Dalai Lama.
On Tuesday this week, the Taiwan Legislative Yuan has approved a bill to dissolve the Mongolian Tibet Affairs Commission. Welcoming the historic move, President Dr. Sangay said, MTAC has been a sore point and a source of misunderstanding between the Tibetans and Taiwanese. The bill won with a majority of 65 votes against 30. On Thursday last week, Canadian senators have launched an inquiry into the state of political prisoners of Tibet in Canadian Senate chamber. The senators' expression of concern over human rights abuses in Tibet comes on the heels of a recently concluded visit to Canada by President Dr. Sangay, who has cautioned Canada against pursuing deeper economic ties with China at the cost of human rights violations and abuse of fundamental liberal values. 5 senators led by Senator Dennis Glenn Paterson have highlighted 5 political prisoners of Tibet who are languishing in Chinese prison for peaceful expression of views in asserting their national identity and defending their culture. Senator Paterson expressed his concern on Panchen Lama, who was abducted by the state at the age of 6. On Thursday last week, a 4-member Australian parliamentary delegation led by Senator Darren Hitch, who was visiting Dharamsala, addressed a press conference.
It is an honour to be here, and several of us have met His Holiness before, but to be here on what we in Australia would call on his home turf or his home ground is added meaning to the visit. And we have been to the Tibetan Children's Village. We've been to monasteries, we've been to nunneries, we've been to schools. We've seen the work that your government in exile does over here, and it's given us a much bigger appreciation of what is happening here. And we're learning about White Wednesday, how you preserve your traditions, the fact that the middle way approach.
Other members of the delegation include former Australian Defence Minister Kevin Andrews from the Liberal Party and Senator Kimberley Kitching and Representative Meryl Swanson from the Australian Labor Party. The members spoke about how they witnessed the progress of the Tibet movement under the leadership of CTA, despite China reducing the Tibetan population into minority in its own land. So much for this week. See you next time. Have a great weekend.